What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you for tuning in to another episode of the On the Ball podcast. Uh, we got a lot we're going to get into tonight. We got a NCAA title game to talk about. Has some NBA breaking news from today that I feel like has a lot of us just confused, and we'll also be looking at um, the NFL draft, which is right around the corner. We keep getting rumors and all that, so we'll kind of talk through some of that as well. But before we even get into all that, gotta introduce the co-host, Brett, not guarding the one, not guarding the two. I mean, there is no one, but guarding the three. What's going on, Brett?
Oh, not much. At the end of the day, I'm looking forward to talking sports, especially some hoops. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're coming down to the end of the season. Like the season ends on Sunday. I don't know how many people necessarily know that or are aware, but Sunday the season ends. Play-in tournament is next Tuesday, and then we're getting into the playoffs, which I feel like the opening weekend of the playoffs as well, when you get like your four games on on one day and you get the other four the other day, you get a full slate of like game ones each day. Pretty exciting time. But before we even get into all of that, we got to talk about a college basketball game that happened last night. It was for Final Four in the championship game. Very intriguing, drama ridden, where we had like late comebacks, we've had buzzer beaters or potential buzzer beaters, which we'll get into here in a little bit with Houston. But looking at that game last night, where it did come down to Houston having the ball down two, looking for an opportunity to either tie it or win it, and they don't even get a shot off because Florida's defense was hounding them. The switching was on par, and I can't remember who it was. A Crier who went up, and because the Florida defender closed out on him, he just dropped the ball. Which, if you play basketball, you can no longer touch the ball after that, and that's how the game ended. So did you find the ending of the game a little anticlimactic because of that?
Yeah, a little bit, and it's unfortunate that it ended kind of on a weird turnover like that with Sharp going up for the three and just kind of
Sure.
dropping the ball.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, got to tip your hat to Florida in that instance because they just played hella defense. That was just absolutely fantastic. Walter Clayton Jr. came on a really nice closeout to force that turnover and, ended up calling game with that. So, it did feel anticlimactic, but also at the same time, I just think it was fantastic defense there by Florida down the stretch.
Right. And when you're looking at Houston, their last four possessions ended on a turnover. Florida, I feel like, had this ability all tournament where if they were trailing in the first half or early in the second half, they kind of had another gear that they could go to where their defense would tighten up. Uh, you know, Clayton would start hitting big shots because he had a quiet first half, but he was a little bit more active in the second half, and they kind of really put a lot of pressure on you as an opposing team. Where if you do go a couple of possessions and you turn the ball over and you don't score, you have a feeling that Florida's going to get something on the other end. And I feel like that's why, when I looked at this Florida team, I thought that they were going to win it all because it's just something about this group that they have that they're just tough. Because it's not only Clayton, you have Elijah Martin, who's a guy that I've like fallen in love with watching him because he's very versatile on the defensive end. He can switch out, guard multiple guys. And then offensively, he has like this tenacity and gets to the rim, finishes over guys that, makes me kind of intrigued to see what happens with him at the next level. But yeah, and I think the crazy thing is Florida might not be going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, Florida has a knack of going back to back. Our GOAT, Al Horford, when he was at Florida, went back to back with Joakim Noah and Corey Brewer and that crew. This group might be in line to do so. But I guess the other question coming from the game last night would be, which I guess kind of goes along with what we were talking about. Will this game be remembered more for Houston choking or Florida seizing the opportunity and winning it?
I mean, everybody's gonna remember it as. I feel like most people will go with Houston like choking, but I think it should just be more about Florida winning it. Like you got to give them credit. Anytime they needed a big shot or a big stop on defense, they came up with it. They had it in them to always get the job done just whenever they needed it. So at the end of the day, like I said, I just tip my hat right to Florida for their performance, and especially on that last possession in clutch time, because that was just fantastic defense by them.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the parts where Houston was getting, I guess, a little tight on the offensive end, because there was a couple of possessions where they got into the lane and they seemed to kind of force up shots over the length that Florida had down there, and sometimes they came up short, where they're like clanging them off the backboard. And you just felt the momentum switching Florida's way throughout that run. And look, like I said, I mean, like you said, I think we should remember it as Florida capping off a really special season. And Houston had a great season as well. Kelvin Sampson coached his behind off. And yes, it ended in, like I said, anticlimactic fashion, but it was still a really good game. And I know a lot of people have been complaining about how NIL and all that's ruining kind of the Cinderella stories. But for how this tournament ended, with your number one, with your higher seeds being there and the games that they put out there, I think if you don't have a sleeper team, if you get play like this, you can kind of take that over, like the George Mason run where everybody's just in love with what they're doing, or like Loyola, Chicago, and all that. So I guess where do you come down on that part of it? Are you more of a fan of the Cinderella sleeper teams making it, or are you okay with top seeds making it to the end and fighting it out?
I'm more than okay with top seeds making it to the end. Whatever gets us the best games, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, it's nice to see Cinderella teams. Don't get me wrong; it's kind of part of what makes a tournament really special. But if my options are top teams making it and giving us like a one possession game or a Cinderella run where the team just gets blown out by 57 as soon as they hit like the Elite Eight or Final Four, like I'll take the better game. So
yeah,
I love a good Cinderella run and it's great, but hey, if you're going to give me the legitimate teams that were the best all year as the Final Four team standing, your 4-1 seeds, I'm not going to complain about that either.
Right. I'm kind of the same way. I feel like that's the most important thing. Good games come down to the wire. The dramatics where like every timeout you're kind of analyzing if they're stopping a run, the momentum swings, big dunks or threes and all that. Like everything happened last night. And, like I said, hats off to Florida. They're the champions of the NCAA world right now. And look, SEC schools used to be football schools. It's seemingly flipping pretty quickly. I mean, Florida football hasn't necessarily been in the title picture in a while, and now they're champions of basketball again. Jory, I know you're in the chat. You had Alabama get there pretty deep into the tournament, where a lot of the attention of Alabama was with Nick Saban and the football squad. So maybe a changing of the guard down in the SEC. I guess also Clayton Jr. was named most outstanding player of the Final Four. I feel like there's no arguments with that in any way.
No, none for me.
Yeah, like he had a great tournament. I mean, he's gonna make himself a good chunk of change off of this performance. Cause I saw some stories where they're like Clayton Jr. could end up like as a Celtics draft pick. I'm like, the Celtics will be drafting at the end of the first round. There's not a chance that this guy makes it that far.
I think it's more possible than people would think. And one thing that the NBA values over a lot of things is age. And isn't Clayton Jr., I believe, 22 already? This could be like he
Yeah.
probably moved up from where he was before,
Mm-hmm.
but it wouldn't surprise me if he fell like farther than people think. Like if he went in like the 20s, that wouldn't shock me at all because at the end of the day, a lot of these teams they'll see the production, but they'll take a chance on the young, unproven 19-year-old with more upside. So, like I said, I wouldn't completely rule it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot about the NBA is real weird about age like that, which I don't know. I feel like getting guys who are proven commodities within the college game just helps them to hit the ground running faster in the NBA. A lot of these one and done guys, it takes them a while to adjust to the NBA and everything. And it seems like the guys who stay for more than 1 year adjust better to the NBA life. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, look, the draft is still a few months away. Kind of like the NFL draft, there'll be a lot of rumors and movement on boards. So maybe maybe Clayton Jr. moves up, or maybe he is there at the bottom of the first round. If he is, Brad Stevens, make it happen. All right, let's shift gears and go to the NBA. I mean, when you thought the NBA was kind of slowing down before it ramps up for the playoffs, we're barely getting past the Taylor Jenkins news in Memphis. Denver one-ups them by waiting a week or so later and fires Mike Malone. Now, this is the same Mike Malone that led the Nuggets to a title in 2023 and is now out the door. So, what were your first initial thoughts when you saw that breaking news come across that Mike Malone and Calvin Booth, I do have to mention, the GM in Denver is fired as well. What was your initial thoughts seeing that story breaking?
Stunned,
Mm-hmm.
like so. When it comes to Mike Malone, I didn't realize that he was that close to getting fired. And let's say even if they were going to fire him, if it happened in the off season, it would have been shocking, but at least give okay, find a new coach, give him an off season to implement a system and everything. You don't fire coaches like a week before the playoff starts. Like that's just to me bizarre behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Booth, that just doesn't surprise me as much because I thought Calvin Booth, if I recall, his contract is expiring this year, and I knew they weren't going to re-up him. I thought he was just gone anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Booth getting, canned, not surprising. Mike Malone, definitely a lot more surprising in my opinion.
As Jory said, thought it was a prank. I mean, it would have been a little late for April Fools, but I thought the same thing too. Because if I'm going to get on Memphis for their timing with Taylor Jenkins, got to get on Denver for their timing with this, where, like I said, season ends Sunday. And now within 4 games, you're going to have an assistant step up and be the new coach. I guess he's going to have to find his voice. The team is obviously going to have to rally behind him and kind of put the Mike Malone stuff to the background and now go out there and try to win a title. That's a lot to ask of a team, but I think Jokic is the type of star player that this may not affect him at all. Because it seems like with Jokic, if they walked me in there tomorrow and said I was a new head coach, Jokic would probably be like, all right, I guess. Like, what are you going to do to help us win games? Like, I don't think he's the type where he's going to care much who's coaching. But I guess what does this move do for you in terms of how far you think Denver goes in the playoffs now?
I really don't think that a coaching change 4 games left in the regular season makes me like any fonder of them.
Mhm.
Like to me, that this was a team that's just getting knocked in the second round with the right matchups. Change the coach, and I think it's a team that's getting knocked in the second round if they get the right matchup. They might even get knocked in the first. They could very well get knocked by the Clippers. It At the end of the day, like this is a team that Jokic covers up a lot of like flaws for them,
Mhm.
but it's still a very poorly constructed team. Like you're blowing half the salary cap. Like your top 4 players, obviously, there's no argument that Jokic is fairly compensated. You can argue that he's undercompensated, and they gave him a max.
Mhm.
But like Jamal Murray is way overpaid. I don't even know how to describe Jamal Murray. It's hardly there. He's hot and cold. He's like Malik Monk with a good PR team. Michael Porter Jr. just hasn't developed ever.
Mhm.
And then I like Aaron Gordon. He's the one guy I do like, and he's the kind of guy that Jokic needs. But when half of your salary cap is going towards maxing out Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, that's just not great. So this is just a flawed roster, and now they're just making flawed decisions.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good point where the Denver team that did win it in 2023 much different than this team right now. And it's kind of crazy to see the erosion that's happened around Jokic in just 2 short years. Because yeah, back then Jamal Murray was like a guy who was underrated, the great player who's never made an all-star team. Now you kind of look at it like maybe there is a reason he hasn't been to an all-star game. Like he has moments, but consistency has been an issue with him, especially this season. Porter Jr., look, I like Michael Porter Jr., but he would be one of those guys that if he was on my team, I would be so frustrated with like every other game because he'll give you a game where he can drop 20 and it looks effortless with him. And then he'll have games where he like railroads the offense, forcing jump shots. And he's the type of guy that if Jokic is on the bench, Porter Jr. should use those minutes to kind of take over, use his versatility, and score. But you and I have talked about it before. When Jokic is on the bench, like Mike Malone was over there with like a wing of prayer, hoping that they didn't like fall off like -20 or something with Jokic on the bench. So whoever is the next GM, whoever's the next coach, that's something that they have to figure out with this roster. And whether it's consolidating some of these guys and shipping them out and just bringing in new faces, I don't know what they do. I mean, George says Porter Jr. is a ping pong ball player. Yeah, like, yeah,
I,
Porter Jr. is one of the more frustrating
he,
guys in the league.
he's somebody like you think like just from his frame and size and his ability to shoot over anyone that has the potential to like take over a game.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just like a flat out Jokic merchant at this point. Like he's just unless you're setting him up, he's just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want him to dribble or really do any of that because as soon as he tries to create his own offense, it's just a disaster class. I think he does a lot well. Like, his defense has improved. He adds some good rebounding value. And obviously he's a, elite 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
But all that, gives to me is he's an oversized 3-and-D guy, which is great. I think that's good. Like, you need guys like MPJ on your team. You just don't need them on a, rookie extension max on your team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a weird situation. I mean, we'll see if the team's one and done. Obviously, this Mike Malone situation will be looked at as that was probably the reason for it. Even though if you look deeper than that, yeah, the roster is very flawed. They've lost some pieces over the last couple of years. But I guess looking at Mike Malone, I know this is probably hard to probably predict or whatever, but where could you see him maybe landing for his next coaching job? Because I assume he's not going to be out there that long as a free agent with his coaching resume. And I feel like the way that he's viewed around the league, like he's going to get another job in the offseason. He may get another one before we get to the actual offseason, but like where could you see him landing?
The first team that came to mind, ironically, was the Kings.
So going
Now,
back to Sacramento.
right, because you have a history in Sacramento. Plus, Domantas Sabonis is not Jokic, but if there's a center in the league that can, kind of sort of mimic some of the things Jokic can do, it's probably Sabonis. Like, when it comes to the Jokic, like I said, if there's a Pokemon evolution of centers, Jokic would be Charizard, Sabonis would be Charmeleon, and Charmander would just be Alprin Sengun. So I think if you really want to get the closest thing you can to, for some continuity with your offense, your best bet would probably just go to Sacramento and pair up with Sabonis and just implement a lot of the stuff that you did with Jokic. Obviously, it wouldn't work as well because Jokic is a one-on-one player.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that there's a whole him going after them for firing Mike Brown. So maybe that doesn't happen. But off the top of my head, that was the first team that came to mind. Oh, hey, Jory, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be probably what would, I guess, hold him back from going back there. But you'd also like to think the Kings should recognize the kind of coach he is and should be able to look past that. But we know a lot of these front offices won't necessarily do that. I mean, I was thinking of places that he could fit because I was like, where's a team where a coach could be on their way out, especially a playoff team? Because I don't know if, Mike Malone necessarily wants to go to one of these, bad teams that are fighting to get into a play. And he may want to, I don't know. But I was looking at let's say New York. It seems like Thibodeau's job's on the line every year. If the Knicks are one and done and Malone is out there, would they move on from Thibodeau to bring in a Mike Malone? I could see that. I don't know if the Knicks are a team that would interest him because, like you said, at least Sabonis has Jokic qualities and he would know kind of what to do with that. I don't know how he would view the Knicks, but that was the first team that kind of came to mind for me with Mike Malone.
See, I like Jory's idea too. If Popovich,
that's actually a really good one too. Yeah.
If Popovich's health continues to bother him, maybe he steps away, sooner rather than later. And I think Mike Malone would be a great coach to, kind of take over after Pop.
That's a fair one, and that would be a great get for San Antonio if it did come down to that. And that's a group where you'd have Fox, you have Wemby, you have Castle. That's a young group that would love to have a guy like Mike Malone and his pedigree. Maybe that does take them to the next level. I don't know.
They win the lottery. They get Cooper Flag.
Look, if San Antonio gets Cooper Flag after they got Tim Duncan and then Wemby, that's crazy right there. The Duncan one hurt me as a Celtics fan because I really wanted Duncan in Boston, but
That was one of the funniest posts I'll ever see. This one guy who was a San Antonio fan posted on Twitter. He goes, "I'm never asking much. I just want the draft gods to bless us once." I'm like, didn't you get Robinson, Duncan, and Wemby?
Yeah.
How much more blessed do you need to get?
Exactly. I mean, they've had their fair share, but I mean, San Antonio is trending in the right direction, so I do like to see it for them. My conspiracy theory: Cooper Flag to the Sixers. The league would love to see Philadelphia come back up. What's the quickest way for them? You give them Cooper Flag. Now that would probably create more questions with that roster adding him to it, but I don't know.
There you go. They can add Cooper Flag so he can join the team and just throw entry passes to Embiid on one knee next year.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right. But with guys like Cooper Flag and Duncans and all that, the conspiracy theories kind of go crazy because, especially with the Ewing one, that was the biggest one when I was a kid. That the league made sure that Ewing went to the Knicks because of the market and everything like that. So it's always going to be part of the draft. But uh, I mean, once again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll see who wins the lottery because that's also a couple of months away. But it is the Cooper Flag sweepstakes.
I'll just say this before we get back on track. If the 76ers do get him, they need to trade Embiid because at that point they should
Right.
be playing an up tempo style of ball, and Embiid at
Mm-hmm.
that point just doesn't fit that kind of roster construction at all.
Yeah. Flag, Maxie McCain. It's not a bad starting point.
Maybe Paul George can at least be a serviceable basketball player next year.
Yeah, maybe. Because this season he was literally Tobias Harris. Like,
he was worse than Tobias Harris.
well, I mean, I feel like numbers wise they're similar, but if you think about what you're paying Paul George compared to Tobias Harris, then yeah, he was actually worse. But look, as a Celtics fan, seeing Philly struggle, I don't lose any sleep over it. But um, I do think like the league would love to see Philadelphia back up there, especially now that you have Boston and New York kind of playing well. Boston, New York, Philly is an interesting uh, kind of rivalry between the cities and everything like that. So, yeah, the league would love to see that happen. Okay, so looking at the season ending on Sunday, I think a lot of teams are going to have an interesting decision to make. Do they rest guys or do they go for seeding and matchups? So if you were coaching one of these teams, like how would you go about these last 3 or 4 games that these teams have?
If I'm in the West, I'm going for seeding.
Okay.
If I'm in the East, I'm just resting.
Okay.
I think in the East, a lot of your playoff spots are pretty locked in, right? In the East, I wouldn't be
Pretty
too
much.
concerned about it, but that's all pretty much locked up. But in the West, every team's within a game of each other or two.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the West is a dogfight this year. You want every single advantage that you can muster. Now, obviously, if your star players are just really, really banged up, then you go for rest. But I think if everybody's healthy, you just kind of go for it because at the end of the day, there are a handful of series in the West. Half of them could go to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get into this game 5 and 7 situation, you'll want your home crowd behind you. So I just think that if you're healthy, go for it. Try to finish strong and just get that best seeding possible to get that home court, even if it's only for a series.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Actually, let me do this. Yeah, so these are the standings kind of going into this final week of the season. As you mentioned in the East, a lot of it is already decided. The only thing that's kind of in question, like your Bucks and Pistons, how do they finish?
We better stay the 5th seed. I want Indiana. I want that smoke.
And I feel like, next week we'll obviously look a little more into it, but I guess for this week we could talk about that because it is your squad. Because when I look at the Bucks, I do think it is interesting with them because I believe the Pacers. I think they beat the Pacers 3 out of the 4 in the regular season, but they dropped down to 6. The Knicks swept the season series against the Bucks. So yeah, for the Bucks, they should go for it to stay at 5 because it looks like Detroit's not going anywhere. If I'm Detroit, I would probably like to get up to 5 to take on Indiana versus the Knicks. So those 2 teams will probably go for it. But yeah, if you're Cleveland, Boston, New York, and Indy, you're kind of locked in as your top 4 and you're not going to move anywhere. Why not rest? Now, as Jory said, Thibodeau and rest, oil and water. that guy can't say rest. So, Brunson and those guys will probably go 30, 35, 40 minutes these last 4 games, only because that's kind of the culture that they've created over there. But yeah, I think a lot of these teams will rest. I mean, the playing teams, I don't know how they'll handle this because those teams are separated by a couple of games. And if you're going to be in the playing tournament, you at least want to be 7-8 to get home games out of it. So let's look out west. Yeah, because once again, if you look at the East, everybody's locked in. All the teams have been eliminated, so you already know who's in it. Look at the West. Only 2 teams are in: Thunder and the Rockets. Everybody else could finish third or be a playing team. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this, and how far does Denver drop now with the Mike Malone stuff? Because we saw Memphis drop right after Taylor Jenkins left. They were I think they were 5th when he was fired. They're now 8th. Does the same thing happen with Denver?
Let's see.
Like, do you think they end
I
up
think
as
it's
a playing
possible.
team? I mean, I can tell you what their remaining schedule is.
They got the Kings. I think they beat the Cape.
Okay.
Oh, I think they can go 2-1 to close out the year still.
That should be good enough for top 6.
Yeah, because they got the Kings. I think they beat the
Mhm.
Kings. They got the Grizzlies. I think they can beat the Grizzlies.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think they could beat the Rockets too. I think at that point they'll be resting.
Yeah, Rockets are kind of locked in it too. Yeah.
So I think it's a very winnable stretch for them. I think Houston could be resting, and even if they aren't, if they don't, it's probably a loss. So I'm predicting 2-1. So I think they'll kind of stay afloat. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Before we keep going, just want to say, appreciate those of you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, follow, depending where you're watching, and join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Jump in the comments, let us know maybe who your team is. If you have any thoughts on your teams, you have questions for us, drop that down in the comments. We're here to interact with you.
And if you're a Phoenix Suns fan, I'm sorry.
I would love to hear from a Suns fan. I feel like I have not come across a Suns fan all season. I mean, some of them are probably hiding under their bed, hoping for this all to end. But like, they still have a shot at the 10 seed. If you think you have a shot, like that's your best bet. I mean, Dallas did get Anthony Davis back, so you kind of feel like Dallas is going to secure one of the spots.
At this point, just purposely tank your last 3 games and pray that Portland keeps winning, and you might as well go after the draft pick at this point if you're Phoenix. Do they have the draft pick this year? I
remember looking this up. I don't think so. I think it's a pick swap this year.
Oh, this is gonna be hilarious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's every other year they have it. I think this year's a pick swap. I think they have theirs next year. Unless they lost that in some other deal.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, who holds the right to the pick swap? Oh, apparently it's OKC.
Yeah.
They hold the right to every pick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's selections 1 through 10 are protected. So if the Suns get into the top 10, it seems like they'll keep the pick. So yeah, if I'm Phoenix, I'm just trying to get those draft odds up at this point, because the worst case scenario is not only you barely miss the play-in, but then you don't get your draft pick. Like, at that point, what did you even do all season?
Mm-hmm. So that brings even more intrigue to the draft lottery. Because if you're whoever the Suns representative will be hoping it's top 10. Because if they're one of those teams that's like 12 or 11, they're gonna be like, oh, that's not our pick. And it's just like, for a team that has limited options with their second apron, with the contracts that they have and their ability to move it, they need the draft right now. Unless you tear off the Band-Aid and trade Booker, who would bring you probably the most in return, but it seems like Phoenix wants to keep Booker because he is the youngest of the three, I believe.
Yeah.
He's at least the most efficient going forward of the three. Like KD's at the end of his rope, and Beal, I don't even know how to describe Beal anymore.
He was at the end of his rope like 2 years ago, but
But it seemed like when he was at Washington, people were like, Beal's a talented offensive player in a terrible situation. Now he's in Phoenix, and it's just like he's just a terrible basketball player right now.
the problem with Beal is
to the rebuilding period with James Jones is pointless. Absolutely,
James Jones should be fired today at this point. Like, there's just no point keeping him around. He should be gone. But I think the problem with Beal is he would have to go somewhere where they desperately need offense. Like, they need an offensive boost where they can just give him the ball and let Beal dominate it, kind of like he did in Washington. You put him in Phoenix, and you already have two scorers, so you don't need a scorer, but that's really all Beal provides for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, he's way overpaid, so was he good in Washington? Yeah, sure, because he had the higher volume to put up higher stats, but it's not like the player itself dramatically changed from Washington to Phoenix. The only thing that changed is his role, and obviously he dealt with some more injuries. So it's unfortunate, but that trade to Phoenix just kind of signaled the beginning of the end for him.
Yeah. Because like when he was in Washington, he had John Wall as his running mate. John Wall was the guy who was always out of the lineup, and like you said, when Wall was out of the lineup, like Beal was the guy. So he had free reign to do whatever he wanted offensively. Defense was always questioned with him. And that's what kind of made it so hilarious that when Phoenix got Beal, this plan to make Beal a point guard, where it's like, where did you get that from? He probably hadn't played point guard since maybe like high school or something. Like he never showed anything in Washington that made you think he could be an NBA point guard. Or at least be happy having to play point guard.
That I heard that too, and that's the part that got me with him, because I got told by some Suns fans at the time, they're like, well, Beal's going to play point. I'm like, you didn't even let him play point in Washington. Like, now you want him to randomly come to a contender and be an elite point guard or even a competent one for you guys? Yeah. Like, and to be fair, the guy who ended up being the point guard, Devin Booker, has made strides in, his playmaking, but yeah, it's just unfortunate. Like, I still think the KD trade, I think that was actually perfectly fine. Like, you can say, they overpaid for him a bit, and that's fine. But KD's still been an elite player for him. Like, he's been very good for this team. But at the end of the day, they unfortunately kind of cut out the legs from that experiment before it could even take off with the Beal trade. So they made a move that not everybody enjoyed with Durant. I thought that was fine, but it just never had a chance, because as soon as they got Beal, I remember just like being like, yep, this team will be lucky to be a second round exit. This is just terrible.
Yeah. That's like, it's sad but true. And now, like I said, if you're a Suns fan, you're relying on the draft. You're hoping ownership wakes up and goes, looking at all of our problems, who do we point it to? James Jones. Like, get him out. Get somebody in there who, I guess you give them the reins to clean up James Jones' messes. And you have to start it over. Now, I don't know, maybe that angers Booker and he becomes part of your cleaning house. Tough. Like, you put yourself in this situation, now you kind of deal with the consequences. And we have to remember, Beal has a no trade clause because Washington gave him that for whatever reason. And what is he, like one of two players that has one in the league? Like,
yeah, the other guy being, LeBron James.
Right. So tell me which one doesn't fit that category. Like, you got LeBron and then it's Bradley Beal with no trade clause. But
yeah, who gave that bum LeBron a fucking no trade clause? Come on now.
Right. But yeah, so Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think I do think that Devin Booker, gets shipped out, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think that my prediction was that I think the Houston Rockets are kind of biding their time, and I think they'll be the ones that get D-Book.
Mm-hmm. If you're Phoenix, I feel like you should be glad that a team like Houston, with the amount of young players that they have, would be interested in a Devin Booker. Because if you're going to move Booker out, you pluck whatever young players you can from Houston and then start over with that group and see what you have there. But yeah,
Well,
this
and
Phoenix Suns team is going to be looked at as one of the worst failed experiments of recent years. And this might look worse than the Brooklyn one with where you had with KD, Kyrie, and Harden, because that was a miserable experiment as well. But at least that one was kind of tied into Kyrie being part-time because not vaccinated and all that. So it was a little different.
it's funny. I'd say the biggest reason I think that book to Houston has a lot of legs is because young players, and Houston does have their 2027 and 2029 first round unprotected pick. Well, one's an unprotected pick, the other's an unprotected pick swap. So you can kind of just give them their future back along with some young players that get D-Book. If I had to put this in like a tier of like failure, I wouldn't put it with the Nets because at least they went into the playoffs and did something. Like they gave a fantastic 7-game series to the future champs, the Bucks. So 2021 run was at least like really fun to watch. I would almost put them up there with like the 2013 Lakers team that got D12. They got Steve Nash, and all the hype went to them, and then everything just like fell apart really quickly due to injuries and just underperforming.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the category I'd put this disaster of a team in.
That's fair. Yeah. I guess to wrap up the Mike Malone talk, look, we're not going to advocate for somebody losing their job. Who do you think is next? Because now at this point, I'm kind of waiting for some playoff team on Sunday to fire their coach before the start of their first round series at this point, because these teams don't care about timing anymore. So who's the next one out?
Hey, listen, Denver, if you need a coach, we'll trade you Doc. I'll take like a future 2032 second round pick.
Yeah.
Who's next? Oh. See, it's always so tough to kind of figure that out, right? Like,
I'll change it a little bit. With a guy like Malone being dismissed, who are the coaches that should feel a little bit weary about their position?
See, what's tough for me is my answer. If you would have asked me that like 2 weeks ago, and this could still be the answer, was Chauncey Billups on Portland. But now they've gotten hot, and I think that might have bought him another year. Teams that I could see making panic moves. Give me the Magic. If they underperform, I could see Jamal Mosley getting looked at, whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
I could see him getting looked at. Who's the coach? Is Billy Donovan the coach of the Bulls? I think he could get looked at. I think those are just two teams out of the East. We could take a look at Nick Nurse. I think is going to be, looked at real closely.
Yep.
And the Suns, we've heard rumors that Coach Bud could be gone. So I think there could be no shortage this summer of, coaches getting canned, unfortunately.
Right. With a lot of these guys just picking up somewhere else and getting another job. Yeah, that's the NBA for you. And with Jenkins and Malone, clearly, like you said, teams will make panic moves, I guess, too soon rather than waiting too late to get rid of some of these guys.
I mean,
so now we gotta wait for the rumors now to see where Taylor Jenkins might be interviewing and where Mike Malone might be interviewing.
I would have held on to Malone, and if you wanted to get rid of him, I would have dangled him on the market. See if we can find a trade for him in the offseason. Because people forget you can trade coaches.
Yeah.
Like, Jason Kidd came to Milwaukee because we traded picks for
Mm-hmm.
him. So I think it would have been worthwhile to almost keep him and then see if maybe you can get some assets back for him. I honestly, long shot, yes. Would you probably would have fired him anyway? Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But in all reality, I don't think it would have hurt to just at this point, with it being so close to the end, just hold on to him and then after the season, just kind of dangle him around, see if he finds a spot he likes, and to see if the team's willing to give you compensation for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably would have been the better way to go about it. Um, so I did think of one last question. I guess rank the openings: Memphis, Denver, and I guess Sacramento, because Sacramento, Doug Christie is an interim coach.
All right.
So rank those three jobs right now. Well, at least I guess going into next year.
Okay, so Sacramento's the last.
Okay.
Um, so this is tough, and it depends on what you want, right? Because I think that Memphis has better depth, like much better depth than the Denver.
Mm-hmm.
However, it also feels like, not every team has the best player in the NBA on their team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably say Jokic makes the Nuggets job the most, like, the best looking. But I don't think Memphis is that far behind. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, the Nuggets have the best player,
Mm-hmm.
but the Suns, to me, have the best depth out of the three. And the Kings are just the Bulls of the West, so nobody really cares about them.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably would agree with that. Yeah, the Kings one would probably be last, and then I agree. You're looking at John Morant led team in Memphis, as long as he can keep the fines at bay, versus a Jokic Murray kind of group in Denver. And at least in Denver, you will get a new GM, because like I said, Booth is gone. Booth was not necessarily having the greatest time there with some of his moves. So maybe that makes it a little bit more appealing that you could kind of start over with a new GM in that situation. All right. Uh let's keep going with actually we'll switch over to NFL now. The NFL draft, a couple of weeks away, which make sure you guys are here wire to wire on draft night, because we will be doing watch along and reactions during the first round. So yeah, mark that on your calendar. Make sure you're here for that. But now we're kind of getting into the time where we're getting a lot of rumors about, guys where they might go and what teams are probably looking at. Like, we understand Ward, Titans seems like a lock, gonna happen on draft night. Now we're starting to see with the Browns and the Giants some shifting in maybe their philosophy as to what they're going to do with their picks. Because a lot of the talk with the Browns was need a quarterback, get a quarterback. But it seemed like they were kind of had their eyes set on Ward, because there was a report that the Giants and the Browns called the Titans for the number one pick. Titans were like, we're good. We're taking our guy. Then it seemed like Abdul Carter was a lock to go to Cleveland at number 2. Pair him up with Myles Garrett. Look for your quarterback later on. Now it's to the point where we're hearing that Travis Hunter could be going to Cleveland, because they're enamored with his ability to play both sides of the ball and everything like that, which now leaves the Giants sitting at 3. And do they, I guess, till some people reach for Shador at 3, but now it's like they may go after Abdul Carter at 3, even though they have Thibodeau, they have Burns kind of in the same room. But I guess Thibodeau hasn't necessarily lived up to his draft positioning. So what do you think about what's going on at the top of this draft that seems to be kind of changing on a daily basis?
I think that almost makes everything more exciting, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the least predictable, the better. I think the fun will start right away. I think Ward will go 1, and I really don't think that. I don't think the Browns go quarterback
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like they know, like whoever they throw at quarterback this year is just it's kind of a lost cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you have a prospect like Abdul Carter sitting on the board, I think they're at a point still where they might as well go with the best prospect available and then just kind of wait till next year and try to get that quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it'll be fun, and I think the rumors will fly, and it'll just be chaotic in the best way possible.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm assuming, you don't think Cleveland would go Shador. I'm assuming you probably think the same thing with the Giants at 3. Now, do you think that's more of that's too high for Shador, or is it something where the Giants have other needs and maybe getting a guy who fills somewhere else would be a better prospect than necessarily taking Sanders there?
I actually think the Giants would be a great place for Shador.
Okay.
I think that's a place because you go, well, they signed Russ and they signed Jameis. Those are two guys they signed for like what, $15 million combined. So they don't have a huge investment tied up in quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, those are two great vets for Shador to learn behind. So actually, I think it's very possible that Shador goes 3, and I think it would be a great spot for him. He can learn. He can build chemistry with Malik Neighbors, and he. I think if there's a spot for him, Dable's kind of a known quarterback whisperer. He kind of helped Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I know we can bring up Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito, but you do need talent in order for a
Yeah.
quarterback whisperer to actually work. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Shador has a lot of talent, and I think it's very possible that the Giants see that in him too, and I think he could be going to New York at 3.
I I mean, I would love to see it because then if it goes the way that you're saying, that means Hunter's there at 4. And if Hunter's there at 4, Vrabel's going to run up there and make that pick. I mean, obviously he wouldn't, but that's yeah. I think I feel like that's what I was thinking was going to happen maybe a couple of weeks ago. I feel like with each day that goes by, I feel like in some way Carter and Hunter go 2 and 3, whether it's Carter at 2, Hunter 3, or Hunter 2, Carter 3.
I
Because
think
oh, go
I
ahead.
definitely think it's Carter too. So if it goes like that, then yeah, I think they would go Hunter at 3.
Yeah, because I feel like Shador, yes, is talented, but I don't think teams feel like taking him in the top, 2 or 3 is the best value for him. I've seen some mock drafts. I saw what Mel Kiper has him going 9 to the Saints. I've seen some people say maybe like the Jets take him. Like it's kind of questionable necessarily where he fits because I think some people thought if he went in the top 2 or 3, our good friend Jackson Dart would then end up as like a top 10 pick because we know teams need quarterbacks and they would rather overdraft for a quarterback than necessarily wait around and hope that they get somebody later on. That's what the Giants did last year. They tried to move up to get Drake May. The Patriots said no, and they got stuck without a quarterback. So if they passed on one this year, they would kind of be exposing themselves to that same situation once again.
If I were Shador and I got drafted to the Saints, I think I would just retire.
Well, I mean, look, you'd have Kellen Moore. I don't know how he feels about Kellen Moore, but you got Chris Olave.
Yeah. I don't know how you would sell him to be excited about all that. Like, yeah, so your best receiver is like one concussion away from retirement, and
Mm-hmm.
behind him, you got like the corpse of Alvin Kamara, and yeah, that's about it. Good luck.
Yeah, got Rashid Shaheed. He runs really fast. I mean, you got that. The division could be a selling point. I mean, you get to play the Falcons twice a year. The Bucks might be a little bit tough, but the Panthers are improving, but it's a division that's kind of up
Yeah,
in the air.
it's funny because I do like Chris Olave, and him and Sanders would make a really good duo.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's just so much concern going on with the Saints, whether it's hell between like health or cap or just overall lack of talent.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, if I was like a quarterback, I would not want to touch that team right now until they kind of fix some of their issues.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens with all of that. Trying to see if there's any other like rumors. Oh well, I mean, I guess to go along with the like Hunter Shador thing, because where I said about Travis Hunter to the Browns at 2, the Browns sent like Stefanski, Haslam, the owner, went to the Colorado workout, and the assumption was they went there to see Travis Hunter. So if they're gonna put in that kind of like press to go see him, it kind of seems like they're probably falling in love with him at 2, because at least for them, and Travis Hunter's talked about this because they ask him all the time, what position you going to play, and he says, I'm going to play both. He says he did it in college, and they asked him like, how did you prepare for it, and he was just like, I think he had a great answer to this. He said it's 24 hours in a day, you sleep for 8. He said the other 16 he was preparing to be wide receiver and a cornerback. And people have mocked him as like the best wide receiver in the draft and the best corner in the draft. I mean, the way that you've, I guess, watched Travis Hunter, do you think he can play both ways, or do you think he's better suited on one side of the ball more than the other, and maybe you just sprinkle him in on the other side?
I think that's just the way to do it. I think the NFL, like going to the next level, I think it's just too physical to try to, play both sides of the ball. Like you can try, but I think what'll happen is he's gonna, get banged up pretty quickly, and I think pretty quickly and early if he tries to do both, and they're eventually just gonna be like, you'll have to mainly play one. Like do it, we can, like almost kind of ironically, like do what someone like Dion did. You can play corner. We can sprinkle you in on some packages at wide receiver. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think he'll have to pick one eventually because I just think the NFL level is just going to be too physical to do both sides of the ball.
Yeah. I think with him, it's going to depend on the situation he goes to as to where he would be the primary and which side would be like the secondary. Because like I said, if he fell to New England, I feel like he would probably be a wide receiver primarily that plays a little corner. And if he goes to Cleveland, I don't know, because their wide receiver group is Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, I don't know really who else. So it's probably gonna be the same thing there, because their cornerbacks are pretty good. Denzel Ward. You have Emerson. There's a third one I'm blanking on, but the need there would probably be like on the wide receiver side. So I think it's gonna be fascinating to see how he handles that. I think it is intriguing that he's set on doing it, and there are some players that do it in the league, like Marcus Jones for the Patriots, plays corner and plays a few packages at wide receiver. So yeah, I just hope teams don't restrict him. Like if he wants to play both sides, like let him do it.
They probably will, or they'll overdo it. Like a lot of NFL teams just don't know how to handle versatility. Some do, some don't, but more often than not, when they get someone who's versatile, half the time it's a bigger issue than it is a gift, because half the teams, especially if you go to a team that's poorly run, like they don't know what to do with that. They try to almost put you in a box, and they're like, okay, you can do all these different things for us, but you're still going to be like primarily a linebacker, for example, and it just doesn't work like that. So I just hope he goes somewhere where they actually know how to use his versatility and are willing to use his versatility.
Yeah. I think the last draft thing before we move on, Ashton Genty has now kind of become one of the more intriguing guys in this draft as well. He plays a position at running back that, I mean, we were looking at the running back position, a year, 2 years ago, as being kind of phased out. Teams didn't want to pay him. We had guys like Josh Jacobs sitting in the parking lot waiting for a contract and never getting one. And it just seemed like they were just begging to get deals. And now it seems like Genty could be a top 10 pick. And my question with Genty is like, do you think teams should be using top 10 picks on running backs? Or is Genty just special enough that you would look past it if a team did pick him in the top 10?
I think he's special enough. It'll be interesting. I don't think. I think you use a top 10 pick on a running back if the rest of the team is ready for a running back. Like, I don't think you can build your entire team around a running back. And if you have more pressing needs at a more important position,
Mm-hmm.
I think you go ahead and fill those needs before you get a running back. But I do think Genty is special. Like, don't get me wrong. But I also don't think that, like, for example, if you're if you're the Las Vegas Raiders and you have other holes to fill in, someone like Mason Graham falls to you, like,
yeah,
I would go for the defensive defensive line piece over the running back. Like, it's interesting. I think he's special enough to go in the top 10, but I also don't think that you should try to build your team like it's 1995 and just get the running back and we'll figure out the rest later, because it just doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah. I heard some people mock him to the Bears, and I feel like I could see that.
I could see the Bears. At the end of the day, they've made a concerted effort to fix the offensive line. They've already made multiple moves to address it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, that balance would be fantastic for Caleb Williams. So actually, I think the Bears would almost be the perfect spot for him, like in the top 10 if he is going top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Them, or I already kind of said them, but the Raiders actually have a pretty good offensive line. So I think the Raiders or Bears are probably the two most likely destinations for him. Plus, Pete Carroll loves his dominant running backs.
Yeah, he does. I guess with Genty, would the carries worry you? Because in 2022, he had 156, which isn't that big of a deal. 2023, he had 220 carries. And then this past season, he had 374 carries. Would you be worried about that amount of carries on his body? Or do you think he could be a Derrick Henry type, where Derrick Henry seems like no matter how many carries you give him, he comes back every year and is still the effective guy that he's been at every spot that he's been in?
I think he can be. That, granted, like, that's rolling the dice. Obviously, it's always risky to play that game with running backs, but yeah, no, I could absolutely see that.
Yeah, that's kind of all I had about the draft, because, like I said, don't want to dive too much into it because we still have a couple of weeks, and we'll touch back on it next week for sure. And just to let you guys know that next week we probably will be doing our first mock draft. We did them last year on the show, and it is interesting. Brett kind of takes over as the Packers. I do the Patriots, and hopefully Dylan is back next week. He does Seahawks, and we kind of have a lot of fun with that. So look out for that next week. But before we do get out of here, unless there's like anything else you wanted to talk about before we move on to our fun trivia to end the show.
No, I'm all good. I can't wait to bizarrely always struggle with trivia.
Right. Okay. Hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens with this one. Also, I did want to touch on, because I know some other shows here on the network have talked about it. The Jaron Duran, the Clubhouse Netflix documentary, where he goes into his mental health and everything like that, and the struggles he had with it, to the point where he almost took his own life and everything like that. I feel like it's a message that does need to be kind of spread, because I feel like mental health really came into the conversation with COVID and isolation and everything like that. And I do think because of that, people are more aware of it. But there is still more that could be done. If you have somebody that just reaching out, saying hi and checking on them can go a long way. So, make sure you do that. And if you can watch the documentary, go ahead and check it out. Clubhouse on Netflix. Because look, I think it's like always a powerful thing when these athletes get real and let you in on some of the darkness that kind of goes on with them. Because Kevin Love went through this as well, where he had mental health things that he was open about, and I think that's very important in uh, with today's generation, and how we see so many young people kind of struggle with it. I think stuff like this is always a powerful message to get out there. So I just wanted to add that in before we moved on.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah. All right. So let me go ahead and get our. All right. Let me see what the categories are. Okay, this could be interesting. So we're gonna go ahead and do hoop grids. You love hoop grids. I love doing hoop grids as well. And this one has a theme to it, and it kind of goes with a team that we talked about tonight. So it'll be interesting to see how we do with this one. Let me share it right here. Here we go. It's a Detroit Pistons themed hoop grid. And so we got the Pistons here. You got Cade Cunningham, teammate, a Ben Wallace teammate, Isaiah Thomas teammate. So kind of got 3 generations of the Pistons here. So you have under 10 points per game season, 25 plus point game regular season. So I guess where would you like to start off with attacking this one?
Whew. These are always tough, but under 10 points per game season for Ben Wallace, we could do Lindsey Hunter.
Okay.
I feel like that would be a fine starting point.
Okay, 2.7%. It's a good start.
Okay, 20, 25. Okay, here we go. Let's see. My problem is I can think of different players that would fit the mold, but I always, try to take it one step further. So,
Right.
like,
that's always a challenge with this one. Because it's easy to come up with like someone who's like real obvious, but you want to get like that.
Like Cade Cunningham under 10 points per game season, I think it'd probably go like Isaiah Livers.
Okay. Okay, 0.9. There you go. And chat, if you have, I guess, any names you want us to try, feel free to throw them out there. Obviously, no looking up anything. We're going honor system here.
Let's see, 25 a game regular season for Isaiah Thomas. I feel like this is obvious, but I know I'm going to go Adrian Dantley. Granted, obvious to me might not be obvious to everyone else.
8.9%.
Okay, so it was pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the good thing with hoop grids is if you think of somebody else who can change it, it doesn't take a guesser. That's why I do like hoop grids. But I think that's a good strategy because when I do these, I usually go kind of older players because a lot of times you get the lower percentage with them.
That was my thought.
Think about them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought. 25 a game regular season, Ben Wallace teammate. Oh, I think I was going to say Allen Iverson, but he was gone when Allen Iverson came to town.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some like really washed players that were? That's the tough part. Cade, Pistons teammate. I think that's. You know what? I'm just going to put the GOAT in there out of respect. Killian Hayes. Gotta show love to Killian.
3% out of Killian Hayes.
Really, I thought Killian would be higher. I guess really, who's thinking about Killian Hayes?
Yeah.
Pistons, Ben Wallace teammate. guessing this will probably be another big pointer one, but probably give me Tayshaun Prince.
Okay. 3.6, that's not bad. I feel like if you look at that group, most people probably went Rip Hamilton or maybe even Billups before.
Yeah, I figured they all went Billups or like Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see, Isaiah Thomas teammate. You know what? This one, try Mark Aguirre.
Okay. 3.4%. All right, so you got Cade Cunningham, 25-plus point game, regular season. Same for Ben Wallace. And then you need an Isaiah Thomas teammate under 10 points per game season.
Oh, Ben Wallace teammate, Shaq. I feel like that might be an obvious one, but we'll try Shaq maybe they forgot they were in Cleveland together.
He did not count for that one.
Man was so washed. They're like, "No, we're not giving you that."
So I'm assuming, Shaq never recorded 25 or more.
Give me Antoine Jameson then. Maybe they forgot about Antoine.
And like he spelled his weird. Yeah, that's not right. And hold on. Oh, it was just there. Jameson. Yeah. Yeah, he did Anton. There we go. Nope.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Like they say, the number one answer to all that's just going to be LeBron James. Let's see. He was in Detroit. Do you think he came from Orlando before Detroit? Was he there when T-Mac was there?
Let's try it. He was 1%.
Yes.
All right. Cade Cunningham, 25-plus point game, regular season.
Can't think of many.
Isaiah Thomas under 10.
Okay, 25 game regular season. Derrick Rose. Forgot he was in Detroit for a while.
Nope.
For a season. Wait, it's just a 25-point game?
Yeah.
Oh, Malachi Flynn. For some reason, I was thinking averaging 25.
Oh, averaging. I got you. 11% had Malachi Flynn.
I guess, to be fair, he did have a 50-piece.
No. So I guess if you wanted to change that one before finishing the grid.
See, now, yeah, because now I feel like I can put, almost anybody in there. I think... Would Isaiah Stewart be lower? Because I think he's had a 25-point. Nah, he might not have actually. I don't think. No, okay. I thought about never mind. Maybe he didn't.
Right, the time when they had him shooting corner threes, maybe he popped off and
he went full Grant Williams and just started cashing corner threes.
Yeah.
Oh man. I feel like I gotta change a Malachi Flynn one. I just gotta think of someone. Let's see. Cause that's killing me right now. Let's see. Who did he play with? He played with Tim Hardaway Jr.
Okay. 5.4.
Okay, that's a lot better.
Yeah. All right. Isaiah Thomas teammate Under 10 per game.
I feel like Lambeer was over 10 a game. I feel like that's also be a really obvious answer, even if he wasn't. This is gonna be the hardest. This is gonna be the hardest one. I just know it, at least for me. Under 10 a game, and I feel like the other obvious answer is gonna be Rodman.
Okay. You want me to try Rodman?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah.
The name I thought of was, I think, James Edwards, but I don't know if he averaged under 10 a game. I'd probably have to.
I'll have to work to redeem myself for next time.
I mean, you did better than 85%. Like that's not bad. So even with a 20% Rodman.
Isaiah Livers saved me.
Yeah. Most popular, Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, Malachi Flynn was the most popular. Chauncey Billups, like we said, probably was the most popular. Darko Milicic, Richard Hamilton, and then Lambeer, Rodman, and Joe Dumars were the most popular answers.
No, that's fair enough.
All right. Well, so those of you who might be new to the show, that's how we go ahead and end each and every episode as long as we have time with some fun trivia. So, like Brett said, he's gonna try to redeem himself next week. We'll see if we do Hoop Grid or maybe something else. I don't know. It kind of depends what kind of mood I'm in. But before we get out of here, Brett, is there anything you want to add or let people know what you got going on? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, you can check us out in 20 minutes for the Meaty Boys podcast. We're on Tuesdays at 8, except next week. So, except next week and the week after that, because next week is WrestleMania week, and I'm doing watch-alongs for WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And then the Tuesday after that, I have to work because I'll be in Green Bay for the NFL draft. So it's going to be, back-to-back, unfortunately missing back-to-back Tuesdays after this one. But it's going to be a great time, and I still plan on giving you Meaty Boys and one and everything in between. So,
yeah. If you want to get everything on the lead up to WrestleMania, check out Meaty Boys coming up next. Also, make sure you guys get up for coffee and sports in the morning. Get your day started 9 a.m. Eastern with kind of a revolving door, whether it's Brett's on there. Was it Fridays, I believe?
Yep.
You got Mo, Will. So make sure you check them out to get your day started. And yeah, make sure you guys check out the rest of the shows here on Wire to Wire, whether it's Passion of Precision, which I do with Jory, or On the Ball, and one Meaty Boys, Coffee and Sports, Wire to Wire. They're the main show. Like, check us all out. Greatly appreciate it. So until next week, Tuesday at 7 o'clock for another edition of the On the Ball podcast for myself and Brett, you enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next week at 7. All right. Bye.